Hello and welcome to the Good Ole Podcast. I'm Jackie French for Wahoo's 24/7. And if you're on our YouTube channel, you obviously see we're in a double box. And that means we have a special guest. And today's episode, we invite streaking the lawn, Zach Carey. Zach, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
So obviously, if we have Zach on the show, that means we're talking about Virginia men's basketball. Now, last week we had a special interview with Ryan Dunn's father, Ed Dunn, on the show to talk a little bit about Ryan. So we didn't really get to talk about the craziness that's been going on in the last week and a half, 2 weeks around the Virginia program. So we're going to touch on a few of those things. And just a heads up, we are recording this before the Boston College game. So that's why we're not discussing the Boston College game, although that we will be publishing this on Thursday. So just a heads up, we are not talking about the Boston College game. So leading into this BC game, Virginia is controlling its own destiny in the ACC, Zach. Right now, they have 4 games. If they win out, they'll get the ACC regular season title, but they will be getting a share of the title if they go 3-1, since Miami and Pitt, if they win out, they face each other at the end of the season. And when you look at this schedule, what do you think? Is it favorable for UVA?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is about as good of a shot as you get to win the ACC. Like, I think typically, you can talk about the conference being down, conference being up, whatever you want, but this is typically how it is in the final stretch in the last month or last now week and a half of play. It's if you have a game lead going into your last 4, that's great. Boston College is not a good basketball team. They could lose that game, and then when this goes up, I look silly, but that should be a win, just as the Notre Dame and Louisville games should have, and fortunately were wins despite being a little bit closer than comfortable. I'm going to come back to North Carolina. I think Clemson is a very winnable game. That team's come back to earth, as a lot of the metrics predicted that they would. They have some good, front court pieces that could provide mismatches for UVA. That could be, a little bit problematic, but they also just lost to Louisville by 10, and that would have been they lost to Boston College. Like, this isn't a great team. UVA is better than them. I think they can beat them at home. Clemson's not a good road team. And then versus Louisville at home, that should be a win. Carolina's tough. Carolina has lost 5 of their 6 games in February. Obviously a team that is not doing well, bad vibes all around, but the talent is still there. No, they're not the number 1 team in the country like they were preseason. This is not the team that made the national championship game last year, but they still have Armando Bacot. They still have Pete Nance. They still have guards who can get hot, even though they have not been this season whatsoever. Bacot only played in 1 minute back in January when UVA played against Carolina. Last season, he averaged 19.5 points and 16.5 rebounds in 2 games against Virginia. So that threat is still there on the road against Carolina. I have a feeling UNC will be the betting favorite in that game, just because of that fact, just because of the fact that even though they lose games, they've typically, those 5 losses in February have all been within 7 or 8 points. That's going to be the test. If they beat Carolina, I will feel very good. And assuming they beat Boston College, I will feel very good about their chances of seizing the 1 seed, winning the ACC outright. But that's the game that's going to test them the most. That's the game where you're going to try and see how can UVA's front court match up against North Carolina's defensively. UVA's been going small ball. Caden Shedrick hasn't been playing very much. You're going to need him to play 25 minutes. You're going to need him to match up on the boards. You're going to need Francisco Cafro to have a big game. And then you're going to need guys like Gardner, Vanderplas, Dunn to step up when you go small ball. And that's really going to test this UVA front court, which has been come and go throughout the season. So I think they have a good shot. I think they have as good of a shot, better of a shot than anybody. The metrics would say that they have probably an 80% chance of winning the ACC, getting the 1 seed. But it's going to be tough. That UNC game worries me. I think if UVA plays the type of basketball that we know they can play in the other 3 games, they'll win those, though.
Yeah, so mathematically, we kind of settle things down for people. It's Miami and Pitt are the 2 teams that are close. Miami number 2, Pitt number 3. So, and they face each other in the season finale for them. So if Virginia goes 3-1 and Miami and Pitt win out, and whoever beats whoever, then they'll share the regular season title. That'll be one option. Now, if Virginia loses 2 and Miami wins out, Miami could could get that regular season title. So that right now, Virginia fully controls its own destiny here. And like you said, the North Carolina game is the one you circle in the last few games because, again, when you kind of touched on it, Baycott was not playing in that home game against UNC because he hurt his ankle in that game. So he left early. So we didn't actually see Virginia face him this year. And with Caden Shedrick now playing a lot of minutes, it's going to be interesting. And they seem to struggle on the interior defensively in those games when they went small ball. So that will be definitely something to watch. And it's not been great for UVA lately. They've combined five points wins between Louisville and Notre Dame, the bottom of the ACC. You can argue maybe Louisville and Notre Dame have been getting better as the season goes out, but you also can say some things aren't clicking for Virginia. One of the things that we've noticed is their 3-point shooting has not been clicking. They have not shot above 33% from the three since January. And that's one of the biggest differences that we see from this UVA team that beat some big top-ranked teams early on in the season to the team now that barely scrapped by against Louisville and Notre Dame.
Right. And I think that, sometimes that's just basketball. You go through shooting slumps, that happens. But I also think that struggle to not score the ball, like UVA's defense was altogether fine against Louisville and Notre Dame. I can pull up the points per possession. Louisville scored exactly, I guess, 1 point per possession against UVA. Notre Dame had 0.948. Like that's fine that's good against those teams. Those teams also don't have a lot going for them. So like that's expected. It's nothing to sort of write home about. But offensively, it's a question mark of, can they produce offense when they're not hitting from three? And I think that some of that is Reese Beekman not being able to get to the rim and score consistently, not being able to be that scorer that we saw earlier in the season. You're seeing them be, bailed out by Kihei Clark in the backcourt, but, they need that shooting oomph, especially from Ben Vanderplas in the front court. They don't have a great back to the basket game. Jaden Gardner can be good in there, but that's really only against mismatches. He's not really doing that against the ACC's best, and I don't mean to harp on him for that. He's still a very good player and has a lot going for him outside of that, but it's a little bit shooting dependent. It's sort of dependent on, can he go 6 for 8 from the mid-range in a game? If he's going 2 for 8 from the mid-range in a game, then you're not really getting production there. And so that's where this UVA offense can be a little bit volatile, especially if you don't have Reese, arguably UVA's best player, scoring consistently. Without Caden Shedrick, you don't really have a rim runner who's getting easy points out of the pick and roll. You don't have a guy. I mean, he's struggled with foul trouble. He's been off and on very much throughout the year, but when he's been on the floor, he's been extremely efficient. All the sort of, stat heads of UVA basketball and basketball in general will tell you that like Hayden Shedrick needs to be on the floor more. It's just a matter of, can you keep him on the floor more? Because he gives you so much that when the ball is in his hands, he's typically scoring. And obviously he's not a great back to the basket guy, but he's a product of the offense running to its full potential. And so there's just a lot of little things. Like, I don't think that this is anything that can't be fixed. I don't think it's a sign that UVA has a bad offense. Sometimes guys go cold for a little bit. This team is a little bit uniquely suited to needing to not go cold. And because they don't have someone sort of who's going to be able to generate points in the front court by throwing the ball into, because of the fact that the guards, Armon Franklin can get going inside. He can be a slasher. So can Reese. Kihei can create things and find people and score for himself as well, as can Reese. It's just a matter of, you got to convert on the back end when those shots are there. When the front court is inefficient, as it has been, you don't make free throws, as they haven't been for a lot of these games. You're putting yourself in positions to fail. I think in the long run, we'll probably look back at these Louisville and Notre Dame games more as sort of, what was that in the middle of February? We'll sort of look back and be like, that was weird. We don't know exactly what happened there, but this team won the ACC and they did what they needed to do. I don't think there's any need to panic. I do think that UVA's been a little bit stagnant sort of within their offensive sets. We had that really great run of offensive production in sort of after they went in that triangle set. since then, and as teams to sort of realize like, okay, like we know what they're running here, we know sort of like what they want to do in this offense. Teams have figured out ways to game that system to sort of play off Ryan Dunn on the perimeter, to sort of do different things and be like, okay, we're gonna let Ben Vanderplas shoot if he's missing. If not, we're gonna, because then we can protect ourselves inside and make sure that those baseline drives aren't there. So it's pretty simple. It's basketball. You got to hit shots to win games. And this team, more than ever, really just needs guys to step up in big moments. And guys just have to get out of their slumps a little bit. Like sometimes that's just what basketball is. And I hate to use all the cliches, but you got to find ways to keep
sports is cliche.
Yeah, sports is cliche. And if you can get Reece Beekman back to sort of his former self, especially early in the season, then I think this team still has very great potential this season.
Yeah, Beekman in the last 3 games has shot 22% from 3 and then 21% from the field. And we saw when he was hurt, not playing 100%, how much of a factor he is. And we're seeing it again. He's there, he's healthy, but he's going on a slump. And we see how much of a key Reece Beekman is to things kind of flowing there. And you mentioned free throws. I mean, that Duke game that ended up being controversial would have never even been controversial if they made most of their free throws. So that's where we are. It's where the margin of error, they have a little more leeway in the margin of error. As we can see, they're still winning games, but it's still, it gets a little uncomfortable is probably the better way of saying, because of the missing of the free throws or just some of the shots that are not going in. So right now for this team, we're kind of take a little break here, but we're going to talk about the NCAA tournament and kind of looking forward there, since we just got figured out what their seed might be in the kind of the bracket release about a week and a half ago. When you look at the competition there, you're like, okay, Virginia might have some matchup concerns if they don't get out of this slump. So we're going to take a quick break, and on the way back, we'll discuss a little bit about their seeding and what the NCAA bracket looks like as of right now. So we'll just be right back. And welcome back to the Good Ole Podcast. I'm Jack Franchuli, and this is Zach Carey, and we're talking about Virginia men's basketball. Just before the break, we're talking about the last few games and where things stand for UVA as far as the ACC regular season title. Obviously, the ACC tournament is also coming ahead. But about a week ago, we also got a glimpse at what the bracket in the NCAA tournament would look like if everything finished today. And that put Virginia as the number 10 overall team, the number 3rd seed in the South region. So, Zach, when you look at what the brackets show of where they believe Virginia is, and you look at those top 16 teams, and you see the trajectory of a lot of those teams, there's some concerning matchups early on. Obviously, things can change. There's a couple 4 games to change your momentum for Virginia to getting out of these slumps. Like we said, it's not the end of the world. There's ebbs and flows when it comes to basketball. But when you look at the 16-team field right now, there's some matchup concerns for UVA early.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at this group of teams. My initial thought is, gosh, I wish that UCLA had beat Illinois in Vegas, so that UVA could have played them rather than Illinois in that last game and maybe get another quality win. But yeah, I mean, you see a team like Baylor improve throughout the year. You see these teams that throughout the season have gotten much better as they've integrated new pieces. I do think that there's sort of a slight concern when you look around the country because it seems like UVA has not made a massive jump from game 1 of the season to game, 25, 26, wherever they are now. And I think that some of that is the experience. Some of that is just that they had so much time in the summer together. And I'm not speaking on matchups specifically, but, I think you're seeing that other teams have gotten much better throughout the year, and UVA might have benefited more early in the season just from bringing everyone back, having that continuity. And so, yeah, but like in this bracket, I mean, if you put UVA at the 10, what 1 seed would that match them up with? Would that be Houston in the Midwest?
I think Yale. I think Jerry Palm has them. Yeah, I think Jerry Palm has them against Yale at one of their brackets, I believe.
Yeah. I think as ever with UVA and UVA basketball, they're capable to be upset. It's it's a cliche probably as well, but as we say now, as we say in this episode, sports are cliches. Playing slower pace means that teams can stick around, and because this UVA team is volatile offensively, as I mentioned, and because they need to make shots, and because the pack line is a great defense until other teams get hot, there's always the potential for upsets. I'm most concerned that UVA is going to lose to a 14 seed in the first round. That's my sort of biggest worry for this season. A team like Yale, who honestly I don't have a lot of info about, but I they have a couple of studs, if I'm remembering things correctly. But yeah, I think if you're in the same bracket as Houston, that's going to be tough to make it to the Final Four if you get beyond that first round and elsewhere. But yeah, I think this UVA team can be built to be a good NCAA tournament team if you find that consistent production from the front court, if you get the backcourt back to their former selves, if you get scoring Speakman being aggressive, Armand Franklin who gets hot, and Kihei Clark just being Kihei Clark. So they're always going to be liable to get upset. They're always going to be liable to sort of struggling in games that they really shouldn't struggle in, like we saw over these last 2 weeks. This team at its best, though, with Tony Bennett at the helm, though, definitely has a shot at a run. And I think that that's all you can really ask for in March, because it's all just sort of a roll of the dice.
At least we've seen this year how Tony Bennett really isn't scared to be adapting as the season goes on. He's made his roster pretty versatile. And that's something that even in media day, he said, I like the fact that I can be versatile this year and adapt my roster and adapt my starting lineup and just adapt as I go, because I have those pieces that I didn't have the previous year. So at least that will help them in March. And one of the big talking points actually that came out of all this was the disrespect for the ACC. That's something that's been talked about by the coaches in the Zoom calls that they had this week. Pitt's head coach, Jake Koppel, he said that he believes that the ACC conference and also the ACC network doesn't do enough to kind of push their teams forward. And to be fair, that's something that I even discussed on the show when it came to the football side of things, where I think the ACC doesn't do enough to promote its athletes compared to other conferences like the Big Ten and the SEC. I mean, I was there when Kyle Trask was being pushed for the Heisman, ended up going to the Heisman celebrations because the SEC network, Florida, kind of pushed and promoted it. So everyone knew Kyle Trask's story, but you don't see that sort of promotion in the ACC. And that's something that I kind of agree. I don't think the ACC is at its best this year. I'm going to be one of those that thinks it is. Yeah. I didn't think the ACC down was last year. I think the ACC narrative last year was wrong, which was proven when we went to the NCAA tournament. Yeah. I think this year they're a little bit down. I think if you compare the 2 seasons, I didn't think the ACC is as great this year. But that narrative that the ACC is always down, I think I agree, falls into that there isn't as much promotion in the conference. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I mean, I think for basketball specifically, it's the brands. Like it's easy for any college basketball fan to look at Duke and Carolina this year and tell you that the ACC is down. And so I think that that's where sort of the ACC network comes in. You got to talk about Pitt. You got to talk about Clemson, even though Clemson's, sort of fallen since the starting 10-1 or 11-1 in the conference. You got to talk about UVA. You have to make UVA sort of like the face of the ACC. They should be the face of the conference right now. UVA should be getting not all the coverage. Obviously, there's so many teams, but they should be.
Duke and North Carolina got all the coverage a lot of times.
Exactly. And so I think that, like, rather than talking about what's wrong with Duke, what's wrong with North Carolina, let's talk about what's going right for Miami. Let's talk about Miami and Jim Laranaga's success in the NCAA tournament and how he has guards, once again, who can make a run, and how he has Nigel Pack and he has Isaiah Wong and he has guys like that. Talk about UVA. I mean, UVA has freaking Kihei Clark. Like, this is the guy that's most experienced in the conference, probably in the country, leading the ACC in wins. And I know they mentioned that. And, I admittedly don't watch enough of the ACC network to, make a definitive statement of they got to improve their product and this, that, and the other. Like, I watch the games and that's just about it, because I have too much time having to do my own content to watch tons of others. But, I understand that narrative and I get where that comes from. And I think that it's true to some degree. I think also the ACC does need to be better. And for the ACC to be at its best, Duke and Carolina do need to be much better than they are this season. So it's sort of like a chicken and the egg thing. So yeah, Duke and Carolina need to be better in the long run. I think there is a reality to the fact that there's a lot of easy wins in the ACC this year. I say that after UVA beat Notre Dame by 3 or Notre Dame by 2 and Louisville by 3. I think that was more a product of UVA not playing well. Yes, those teams have gotten better, but like, come on, Louisville is still one of the worst major conference teams ever. And Notre Dame is not far away from that. So I think that there's enough sort of like bad teams at the back end of the ACC that make it not amazing. And then the top of the ACC, if you're talking UVA and Miami nationally, those teams are probably more in the 10 to 20 range than they are the top 10. So they're sort of tier 2, tier 3 teams who can make a run, but aren't sort of like first teams out of the mouth when talking about NCAA championship favorites. And so sort of that reality does fit into the ACC just not quite being as good. And yeah, the narrative of, okay, like games in November and December are what decide this, but also like UVA is benefiting majorly from games in November and December because they were a team who played together so long. Like, does UVA beat Baylor right now on a neutral court? I don't know. Baylor would probably be favored. Like, Keontae George has gotten better. They've had pieces back into the fold. So it goes back and forth. I don't totally buy into the like, okay, the ACC is just hurt by games in November and December. It's like, well, yeah, you got to win games in November and December too if you want to have a good tournament resume. That's just basketball. Like it's a long season, and maybe there should be more non-conference games in January and February, but this is, and you just sometimes you don't win the games, and sometimes your conference just isn't quite as good. I say this, and then they're going to have 3 teams in the Elite 8, and I'm going to look like a fool, and everyone's going to look like a fool. But I think that there's probably less of a chance of that this year than last year, just looking at this conference and looking at the teams who will be in the tournament from this conference.
Yeah, last year, a lot of people kind of had to swallow their ACC was bad after Miami and the ACC beat up a couple of teams they weren't expected to, and the Big Ten didn't have any teams past that first weekend, and the Big Ten was hyped up. So that's a lot of it. Again, and it's a lot of factors going into this, and some of it is to do with how those coverage and the ACC in basketball. It just happens that Duke and UNC get primarily a lot of the coverage, so when they're down, there's always going to be a perception that the whole conference is down, despite that UVA has been consistently been up there with some of the best teams in the nation. Now, of course, last year wasn't where anyone expected UVA to be, but at the same time, they're still in the national conversation. And I feel like UVA doesn't generally get the respect. I remember when I was covering Florida, UVA was generally not discussed as much at SEC territory. Still Duke and UNC were still the teams that were being discussed. So I think that's also something that the ACC can do a little bit better, is promoting those teams that have been consistent enough in their wins. They're not named Duke and UNC in basketball. And then even on the football side of things, they're not named Florida State or Clemson or Miami. It's you just need that more promotion, especially, when Pitt wins the ACC Coastal, you still need it's not the ACC is down. Pitt was just happening to have a very good experienced quarterback this year. So again, it's just something that the ACC needs to do better at as their overall thing. So we're going to end with one thing before we let you go, Zach, because obviously, like I said, we didn't have a podcast discussing that Duke game. So we're going to end talking about that controversial call. But I will say, like, I left. So the Duke game happened this Saturday night. So I was on a plane to Arizona on Sunday. So I didn't get to see the aftermath very much. I decided to kind of stay away from stuff. So, but I came back and I saw all the stories coming off. I saw that glorious ACC statement. My goodness. It's just crazy to me how, like, I still remember the Duke travel that secured them the win over UVA, and that one call elicited so much off social media and ACC statement. And when you look at it, and I get what people were saying, like, it's, you can't take away a foul. Once the foul's called, it's to take away. But the rule does say, and which is why I got so irked by the ACC statement, the rule does say, and it's like the third section of the rule they cited, there's actually another citation in that same rule that says if the foul happened after the expiration of time, it, like, especially the way that foul happened, it's not a foul. So technically the referees were right. And if you look at it, it was also unclear what the actual foul was. No one knew.
Who was it called on?
Didn't know, and who was in called on. And if Reese Beekman, that was a clean block, so it wasn't the block. And they say it's body contact, but I didn't look Reese Beekman. And if they said it was actually Ryan Dunn, and it didn't seem like Ryan Dunn even touched the guy.
Dunn barely touched him. Yeah.
So it's just I was just surprised at just the controversy that came out of that.
It's Duke. Like, I mean, they're crybabies, and like, I UVA student here, so I biased, but listen, when the foul was called, I didn't think it was a foul. I was still shocked when they went to the monitor and overturned that it was a foul. I do think that there is some complaint there that, like, I believe that the foul that they thought they called happened before the whistle. I think that they sort of like called it on, like, it was more of a, like, there seemed to be a lot of contact there. I think that's a foul. And then they went to the monitor and it was like, it looked like a foul. But we can say that the foul that we called happened after the whistle. And so it was sort of just a, like, whoops.
Kind of a cop-out.
Yeah, kind of a cop-out. Whoopsie. And so I think the ACC should have just shut up and just, like, let it be. They made things so much more complicated by putting out statements and then addendums to statements and then, whatever. Like, just let it go. Kyle Filipowski should have scored over the guy that's a foot shorter than him. They also took 5.5 seconds to inbound. If you're going to make a statement about the foul, make the statement about the inbounds, make the statement about Kyle Filipowski, like, elbowing Reese earlier in the game, talk about the BS charge calls that Ryan Young was getting. Like, you can't just you get into a spiral. It's like that UVA Auburn game in 2019. Like, Kyle Guy, first of all, was fouled. Did Ty Jerome double dribble? Yes. Also, I'm blanking on the guy's name who fouled Kyle. He traveled a minute earlier off an inbounds pass where he, like, rotated and pivoted like 3 different times with 2 different pivot foots. So, like, this is just basketball. Like, and I know I've said it like 5 times on this podcast, and now I feel like I'm just saying that too much. But, like, that, it happens. It wasn't a foul. Duke, you weren't down 1. You had 5 minutes to go win it. You had the opportunity. And God, John Shire, like, he seems like a fine coach, fine person, but, like, shut up about the call. It's fine in the post-game presser if you want to, like, whine about it a little bit or whatever, but, like, be a better team. You have, like, the top 15 players, freshmen in the country. Like, go win games already and stop whining about calls that, frankly, weren't that egregious. If it was egregious, like, I would understand more of the sort of the Duke being annoyed by it. Like, I would get that. But it wasn't like Reese slapped Filipowski's arm and that prevented him from scoring the basket. Like, there wasn't an obvious foul called. Reese got ball and then hand. That's a fair play. Ryan Dunn made contact with Filipowski after the whistle, and it was just it wasn't anything egregious. So, long story short, UVA won the game. Did they deserve to win the game after shooting whatever they shot from the free throw line? Probably not, but they did. And win's a win. Refs are going to make calls that they're going to make. The Grayson Allen travel is, we'll say it's been avenged.
Yeah, it was just like, I totally understand Shire at the end of the post-game press conference, because it was strange because referees never explained it to the coaches what the actual call was. So even us in the press room, we had no idea what the actual call was.
We were theorizing.
We were theorizing. We tried to figure out who was the actual one who got called the foul on. Yeah. And then they in the JPJ, they announced they overturned the foul, which is you can't.
You can't do.
So it was very it was very, very confusing. So you're just like, and especially when you're trying to write a story, you're like, what is actually happening? So, but for me, what the biggest thing was the ACC releasing the statement. That was and it was like 11:30 o'clock at midnight. I'm like, why?
I was driving home to Philly. Yeah, I was in the
car. That was my big thing.
On? Yeah,
it's like that was my big thing. Why get involved? Why get involved in this situation? I mean, it's not going to change the outcome of the game at this point. So that was my biggest takeaway was so is now the ACC going to release a statement after every single controversial call that happens in any sort of game, basketball or football?
Yeah.
Because I mean, we've dealt with a few controversial calls in football too. So I guess we should wait for an ACC statement on those as well. So, but Zach, thank you so much for joining us and kind of talking about Virginia basketball.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Anytime.
And if you continue to like what you're hearing about the podcast, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcast. We're available in different hearing platforms. And also, why don't you go ahead and like this channel and like this video on YouTube, and make sure you click on the bell so that you're notified whenever there's a new video. So for Zach Carey, I'm Jackie Franchuli, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your week.